His wife said their marriage would be better without intimacy. He tried to adjust, but soon, everything faded. The warmth, the touch, the love. Then came the late nights, the secret messages, and the painful truth. She had taken intimacy somewhere else. But instead of confronting her, he did something unexpected. He walked away. Now, just when she thinks she has moved on, a shocking truth is about to be revealed. One that will change everything she thought she knew. Stay tuned for the full story. Now story begin. It was a regular evening. At least, that's what I thought. The soft glow of the television flickered against the walls, casting shadows that stretched and shifted as if mimicking the unease creeping into my life. She sat beside me, distant, silent, her fingers loosely gripping a cup of tea she hadn't taken a sip from. She had been quieter than usual that day. I had assumed it was exhaustion, the weight of work, or some minor irritation she hadn't bothered to voice. I had no reason to believe that, within the next few minutes, my marriage would become unrecognizable. "I've been thinking," she said finally, her voice steady but calculated. I turned to her, expecting something mundane, maybe a vacation idea or a discussion about her job. But instead, her next words hit me like a blow I hadn't braced for. "I think we'd be better off without intimacy." At first, I laughed, a quiet chuckle meant to dissolve what had to be a joke. But her face remained unreadable, her calmness unsettling. "What do you mean?" I asked, already feeling the ground shift beneath me. She set her cup down, folding her hands neatly in her lap. "I just think we don't need it. We've been together long enough." I frowned, trying to make sense of her words. This was the same woman who used to crave my touch, who used to pull me into spontaneous kisses while cooking, who whispered in the dark how much she loved being close to me. Now, she was saying we should just stop. "Wait, so you're saying no more at all?" I clarified, my stomach twisting. "Yes." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for doubt. "I think it would be healthier for us." Healthier? The word echoed in my mind like an insult. Since when was intimacy unhealthy? Since when did closeness become something we needed to eliminate? I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Is something wrong? Did I do something? Are you not attracted to me anymore?" She shook her head. "It's not about that. I love you. I just feel like our relationship should be more about companionship, not physical needs." I stared at her, trying to find some kind of hidden meaning, some underlying reason that made sense. But her expression was neutral, unwavering, as if she had already come to terms with this. "Have you been feeling this way for a long time?" I asked, my voice quieter now. She hesitated, just for a second. "I've been considering it for a while." "Yes." The weight of her words settled in my chest. She had already decided. This wasn't a conversation, it was a declaration. She was informing me of the change, not asking if I was okay with it. I should have argued. I should have told her that marriage isn't a contract where one person gets to rewrite the terms unilaterally. But instead, I just nodded, feeling a crack form deep inside me. "Okay." I murmured, though nothing about this felt okay. She smiled then, as if relieved that I hadn't fought her on it. Maybe she thought I would adjust, that in time, I would see things her way. But deep down, I knew the truth. Something between us had just broken, and I had no idea how to fix it. I wanted to believe things wouldn't change, that we could still be a couple without the closeness, that somehow, the love we had built over the years would be enough to sustain us. For a while, I tried. I convinced myself that intimacy wasn't everything, that maybe I had placed too much importance on it. After all, wasn't love supposed to be deeper than just physical connection? But it didn't take long for me to realize it wasn't just about intimacy. It was about the way she stopped touching me altogether. At first, it was subtle. She no longer rested her hand on my arm when she walked past. No more leaning into me while we sat on the couch. No casual fingers through my hair when she sat beside me. It wasn't just our nights that had grown cold. It was everything. One evening, we sat together on the couch, the television playing some show neither of us was really watching. The silence between us felt thick, suffocating. I glanced over at her, hoping for some kind of connection, something to bridge the growing gap between us. "You okay?" I finally asked. She nodded, not looking up from her phone. "Yeah, just tired." Tired. That had become her answer for everything. I swallowed down the frustration and forced a smile. "Do you want to do something this weekend? Maybe dinner?" She glanced at me then, her expression unreadable. "Sure." But when the night came, It was just another reminder of how much had changed. I had picked a restaurant she used to love, hoping it would spark something between us. We talked over dinner, but it wasn't the same. The conversation was functional: work, schedules, errands, like two people sharing a space, not a life. Halfway through the meal, I reached for her hand across the table. She let me hold it, but her fingers didn't curl around mine like they used to. There was no squeeze, no warmth. It felt like holding the hand of someone who was merely tolerating it. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't just that she had removed intimacy from our marriage. She had removed us. That night, she went to bed earlier than usual. I stayed behind, staring at nothing, feeling like a guest in my own home. I stopped trying after that, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. This wasn't something I could fix on my own. I let her dictate how things would be. I let her build the distance, and I simply existed within it. And then, she started changing. At first, it was subtle, little things I noticed because I knew her. She started putting in more effort with her appearance. She wore perfume again, the same one she used to wear on our date nights. She bought new clothes, ones I had never seen her wear around me. Then came the late nights. She started going out more, always with the same vague explanation, just grabbing a drink with some friends from work. I never questioned it. I told myself she was just trying to fill the space between us. But the more it happened, the more something gnawed at me. She would come home lighter, almost happy. I hadn't seen that kind of energy from her in months. Not in our conversations, not in our quiet dinners, not in anything we shared anymore. Then, one night, curiosity got the better of me. She was in the shower, and her phone was right there. I knew her password. She had never bothered to change it. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just some kind of reassurance that my gut was wrong. But I found the messages almost immediately. Inside jokes, late-night check-ins, compliments disguised as casual remarks. And then, one message that made my chest tighten. I wish I didn't have to go home yet. I locked her phone and set it back where I found it. My hands were steady. My mind was surprisingly clear. There was no more guessing. She hadn't just removed intimacy from our marriage. She had taken it somewhere else. That night, I didn't say a word. I climbed into bed beside her, just like I had every other night before. She was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic sound of her breathing. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just done pretending. The morning after I found those messages, something inside me shifted. I didn't explode. I didn't confront her. I didn't even feel the urge to demand answers. Instead, I went completely quiet. Not the kind of silence that begs for attention. Not the kind that sulks in hopes of a reaction. No, this was the quiet of someone who had finally stopped trying. I woke up, got dressed, and left the house without a word. No good morning. No have a nice day. Just an empty, mechanical routine, like I was living with a stranger. And in many ways, I was. She must have noticed. A part of me wondered if she had expected an outburst. If she had already come up with justifications in her head. Excuses she could throw at me if I dared to ask who he was, or why she had been confiding in him instead of me. But I didn't ask. I let her feel the weight of the silence I had been drowning in for months. I started focusing on myself. Not in a petty way, not to prove a point, just because I was tired of being the only one trying. I went to the gym more. I picked up hobbies I had let go of over the years. I started making plans without checking in with her first. And she noticed. She started watching me closer, asking more questions, trying to insert herself into my plans. "Where are you going?" she asked one evening as I grabbed my keys. "Out," I said simply. "With who?" I met her gaze for the first time in what felt like weeks. "Why do you care?" She blinked, clearly thrown off by my response. She had expected me to explain myself, to justify myself the way I always had. But that version of me was gone. She frowned. "I just want to know what's going on with you." I let out a quiet laugh and shook my head. "No, you don't." "Of course I do." I turned to her then, my voice calm but firm. "No, you don't. You cared when I was begging for your attention, when I was the one chasing you, trying to hold this together while you pretended like it didn't matter. Now that I've stopped, now you care." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She hadn't been prepared for this conversation. She had expected a fight, maybe even guilt-tripping. What she hadn't expected was for me to stand there, completely unbothered by the idea of losing her. I sighed, running a hand over my face. I was tired. Tired of the mind games. Tired of the silence. Tired of waiting for her to choose me again. And then, I said the words that changed everything. I know about him. Her breath caught. And in that moment, I had all the confirmation I needed. For a long moment, she said nothing. She just stood there, staring at me like she was trying to figure out how much I knew. I don't know what you're talking about, she finally said, her voice weaker than before. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Don't insult me, I said, my tone calm but firm. I've seen the messages. Her face paled, but she didn't argue. She didn't ask what messages. She didn't demand proof. Because she knew. I know where you've been when you say you're out with friends, I continued, crossing my arms. And honestly, I don't even care anymore. That last part seemed to hit her the hardest. She inhaled sharply, her eyes darting away, searching for something. Maybe an excuse, maybe a way to spin this into something less than what it was. It's not what you think, she murmured. I let out a short, bitter laugh. That's the part you don't get. I shook my head. I don't think anything anymore. I know. Silence. She swallowed hard, her hands gripping the hem of her sweater like she was trying to hold herself together. I had spent months drowning in doubt, wondering if I was imagining things, blaming myself for the growing distance between us. But this moment, it was pure clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overthinking. She had checked out long before I did. I exhaled slowly and ran a hand through my hair. I could feel the finality settling in my bones, a weight I wasn't sure if I was ready for, but I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I'm done, I said simply. Her eyes snapped back to mine, wide and unprepared. What do you mean, done? I shrugged. If you don't want a marriage, fine. But I'm not going to be the only one sacrificing while you get to live two lives. For the first time in months, I saw something crack in her. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was just the realization that she had pushed too far. But it didn't matter, because I had already made up my mind. She didn't speak right away. She just sat there, stunned, as if she had never once considered that I might actually walk away. Maybe she thought I would fight for her. Maybe she thought I would beg her to reconsider. Maybe she thought I would be the one to say, we can fix this. We can make this work. But I had spent months doing that. Months trying to be enough for someone who had already decided that I wasn't. And now? Now I was done. She sat there, stunned. For the first time in months, she didn't have control of the situation. So that's it, she whispered. I tilted my head, studying her, really studying her. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, the woman I had fought for, and the woman who had let me fight alone. That's it, I repeated, shaking my head. No, you ended this long before I did. Her jaw tightened. I thought we could be happy this way, she murmured. I exhaled, my chest heavy with exhaustion. No, you thought you could be happy this way. You thought I would just accept it, that I wouldn't need the things you decided to throw away. Her eyes flickered with something, guilt, maybe. I never meant to hurt you, she said. That almost made me laugh. Not because I thought she was lying, but because it was the most pointless thing she could have said. You didn't care if you did. I replied, my voice calm but unwavering. That's what it comes down to. It wasn't about some grand plan to hurt me. It was that you stopped caring whether or not you did. And that's worse. She opened her mouth, but I was already walking away. I didn't want to hear more justifications. I didn't want to hear how she had never planned for this to happen. Because the truth was, she had let it happen. Piece by piece. Day by day. And that was the part one couldn't forgive. The next few days were quiet. She didn't try to fix things. She didn't fight for me the way I had fought for her. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to save. Or maybe, deep down, she had wanted this outcome all along, had wanted me to be the one to walk away so she wouldn't have to feel guilty about doing it herself. I started packing my things. There wasn't a dramatic fight. No screaming, no tears, no last-minute confessions. Just quiet acceptance. And when I finally closed the door behind me for the last time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. She had wanted a life without intimacy, without connection, without the responsibilities of a real marriage. Now she had exactly what she had asked for. She just didn't realize that without meant without me. The first night away from her, I expected to feel lost. I expected to miss her presence beside me, the familiar sound of her breathing as she slept, the small routines we had built over the years. But all I felt was light. For the first time in months, I wasn't suffocating under the weight of a marriage that had turned into a quiet, lonely prison. She had made her choice long ago. And now, finally, I had made mine. If this story of resilience and redemption touched your heart, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Lost Love Mystery. Your support allows us to continue bringing you heartfelt tales like this one. Have a story of your own? We'd love to hear it. Share your journey with us. Stay tuned. I spent the first few weeks focusing on myself, not to numb the pain, but because I had spent so long making her the center of my world that I had forgotten what it meant to just be me. I went out more, reconnected with old friends, started saying yes to things I used to turn down. I didn't check my phone every few minutes, waiting for a message that never came. I didn't sit in silence, wondering what I had done wrong. Because I finally understood, this wasn't about me. She had convinced herself that love could exist without connection, that she could strip our marriage down to just companionship and still keep me. But marriage isn't a contract where one person gets to rewrite the terms while the other suffers in silence. Marriage is a choice. Every single day, and she had stopped choosing me a long time ago. One evening, weeks after I left, my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I just stared at it, debating whether I should even pick up. But curiosity got the best of me. Hello. She was quiet for a second, then, hey. Her voice was hesitant, uncertain, so different from the woman who had once spoken with such certainty when she told me we were better off without intimacy. How are you? She asked. I'm good. And for the first time, I meant it. More silence. I've been thinking about us, she admitted. About everything. I didn't respond. I just waited. I think I made a mistake, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I closed my eyes. I had expected this at some point. I knew, deep down, that the moment I stopped chasing her, she would finally look back. But it was too late. I had spent months mourning our marriage, grieving the slow death of what we once had. But I wasn't grieving anymore. I had already said my goodbyes. So, I took a slow breath and spoke the words I knew she wasn't ready to hear. I'm not coming back. She inhaled sharply, as if the finality of it had just hit her. But we can fix this, she rushed to say. We can. No, we can't. My voice was steady, stronger than it had been in months. You wanted a life without intimacy, without connection, without me. She started to speak, but I didn't let her. And now you have it. Silence. The weight of my words settled between us, and I could feel her realization, like she was only just now grasping what she had lost. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said. Then, without another word, I hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, half expecting it to ring again. It didn't, and I didn't care. I exhaled, feeling a peace I hadn't felt in so long. She had let go of me long before I walked away. The only difference now? This time, I let go too. And for the first time in forever, I was free. And that's the end.